Hey, what's up, Spice Heads? Welcome back to yet another great video meetup today, sponsored by Trusted Tech. We've got a great show for y'all today. We're going to be talking all about Microsoft 365 and how to take your implementation to the next level. For more on this, we are joined by a couple of fine gentlemen from Trusted Tech. We're here to answer all your questions and more. So let's go ahead and get started with a round of introductions. Coming to us first, you guys have met him before on previous video meetups. Excited to have him back. Please welcome Mr. Mike Yu. Michael, how's it going today?
It's going well. Thank you for asking. So my name is Michael. I am a systems architect here at Trusted Tech Team. As I specialize in Azure. I started out my IT journey working at MSPs, dealing with a whole bunch of different environments and technologies. And along the way, I found out that cloud was what I really wanted to get into. So I joined Trusted Tech as a cloud architect.
Wonderful. Well, thanks for joining us, Michael. We're excited to have you back. Our next guest is also a returning guest from Trusted Tech. Please welcome Mr. Chidera Adowu. Chidera, how's it going, man? Welcome.
It's going well, Justin. How's it going, Spice Heads? As Justin said, my name is Chidera, and I am also with Trusted Tech Team. I myself began my foray into IT through systems building, which quickly evolved into a passion for solutions architecting for SMBs and enterprises. As a Trusted Tech Team cloud and systems architect, I specialize in Microsoft 365 solutions with a strong emphasis on security and compliance.
All right, wonderful. Well, thank you guys both for joining us today. Before we go any further, I'd like to go ahead and get some housekeeping items out of the way. Of course, if you have questions for our panel today, make sure to get those questions into Q&A down below. We'll be taking them later on in the show. Trusted Tech's also provided quite a lot of good downloads in that resource list. If you guys are either thinking about deploying Microsoft 365 or already have done it, a lot of that would be really helpful for you. As a special, I wanted to give a special shout out to chat. A lot of folks that I haven't seen in quite some time. Divorce, I see a lot of Native Texan, Percussive Maintenance. Hope you all are doing well. Of course, if you do participate in chat, we do ask that you adhere to our community guidelines. We want to make sure that everybody is having a positive and professional time in today's event. And as a special thank you for hanging out with us today, not one but two of y'all are going to be given a $250 Amazon gift card. Perfect just in time for the holidays, but I really think that you guys should spend that on yourselves and treat yourselves and don't tell your family about it. Just wait for the prizes to roll in. And yeah, make sure to stick around. We'll be answering or announcing the winners of that prize at the end of the show. All right, well, let's go ahead and get started into it. Michael, I'd like to start off with you. Microsoft 365, I think there's a lot of folks that have some experience with it. Some of us have come over from Office 365. But like everything Microsoft subscription related, it's constantly changing. So Can you give us a breakdown of what are some of the most significant changes in the Microsoft 365 ecosystem in the past year?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's four main areas that we want to cover today, and the first is the changes to the admin center itself, and the segmentation of the different centers with the new security and compliance center, things like that. The modernization of the GUI to make it more intuitive and more streamlined and easier to use, and then the quality of life changes for a lot of MSP related tasks inside the partner center as well. We're also going to cover a lot of the apps from Microsoft, both the updates to the existing ones as well as some new ones that we think are pretty exciting. We're also going to touch very heavily on security because security is something that's going to get only more important as times go on with all of the hacks and the phishing and the cryptos and stuff out there. So we definitely want to touch on the new ways that you can leverage security from Microsoft to keep your business safe. We're also going to go over the branding change from Office 365 to Microsoft 365. We're going to cover what some of those changes are so you kind of have a better understanding of the new names that you might be seeing. And the overall focus of most of these updates from Microsoft is to create a modern workplace. And what that really means for them is they want all of their offerings to interact well with both each other as well as other softwares. Big things like Salesforce and QuickBooks. So it's going to be a lot of their future updates are also going to be really touching on accessibility and user experience and user interface, and just trying to make everything a much more streamlined and efficient package for the end user.
All right, great. Let's talk next with Shidera. So, we talked about some new apps that are available. Can you go over some of those and touch on some of the changes made to existing apps that we know about?
Absolutely. As Mike mentioned, Microsoft is constantly developing new apps and improving on existing apps. Many of these improvements are in response to user feedback from user forums like Microsoft User Voice, where customers are able to submit requests directly to Microsoft's dev team regarding changes that they would like to see in Microsoft 365 apps. Microsoft Lists is one of these newly released apps, and it helps users organize events, issues, assets, and so much more. You can use the pre-made templates or create your own based on your unique requirements. The true power of lists can be fully realized when you incorporate it into Teams and utilize the automation capabilities found in the Microsoft Power Platform. Some other noteworthy releases are the tasks, project, and roadmap apps in Microsoft Teams. The incorporation of the aforementioned apps in Microsoft Teams follows the ongoing trend of Teams metamorphosis into a single pane of glass from which team members can manage, track, and collaborate on projects from within the Teams app. Microsoft Teams users who have the appropriate project licensing can now create projects and roadmaps within their Teams app and share them with team members. Microsoft is one of the few companies that engages directly with customers about how it can improve user experience, and I would encourage all of our viewers to add their voice to the forums with any templates, or rather any updates that they would like to see made to their favorite apps. Now, before jumping into some of the recent changes to Microsoft 365, I would like to mention that the Microsoft 365 Message Center is a great resource for admins who are looking to stay up to date on planned and recently implemented feature updates. The Message Center can be accessed by signing into the Microsoft 365 Admin Center, clicking on the Health dropdown, and selecting Message Center, appropriately named. Along with seeing a high-level overview of planned changes, you can also configure your notification preferences to fine-tune the types of Message Center notifications you receive emails about. Some noteworthy changes that I identified in a recent view of the Message Center include the general availability of the Microsoft Productivity Score, the release of Microsoft Teams virtual breakout rooms, and the caching of SharePoint and OneDrive videos in Azure's Content Delivery Network for optimized playback experience. Speaking of SharePoint, Microsoft has also enabled the communication site experience on classic team sites. By running a simple PowerShell commandlet, you can bring modern communication site features to your classic team sites. Enacting this change on your classic team site will allow your users to share news, reports, statuses, and other visually appealing content. We also have some updates to Yammer, Microsoft's social media platform for organization. These updates are centered around introducing a more fluid and natural experience to user engagement with a new live events experience, moderated conversations in live events, and even guest access capabilities so you and people from outside of your organization, or rather, so you can allow people from outside your organization into your Yammer communities. And at the risk of beating the dead horse, Microsoft Teams has seen the most prolific updates out of all the Microsoft 365 apps, with new features like offline presence, which, to be honest, allows users to choose when they want to be seen as being online by others, in case you need some time to yourself. Microsoft has also expanded the spell checking intelligence in Teams to work with multiple languages, signifying a more inclusive approach to supporting Microsoft's global users. With the prevalence of communication platforms like Teams and Zoom in modern workplaces, it is no wonder that Microsoft has refocused its efforts to propel Teams to the forefront of its communication app stack. To be frank, the changes I just mentioned are but a small fraction of the improvements outlined in the Microsoft 365 Message Center, and we can go on all day talking about them. For your convenience, however, we've included a direct link to the Message Center in our sidebar.
Let's go back to Michael next. It sounds like Microsoft, obviously is tinkering with UI UX changes all the time. And so it sounds like the new 365 Admin Center is pretty much more of the same. Can you talk about any changes that we should be aware of as administrators due to kind of recent updates?
Yeah, absolutely. So, like you said earlier, Microsoft makes a lot of changes, almost as much as Adobe updates Acrobat. That's an exaggeration, obviously. No, nothing gets updated more than Acrobat, but Microsoft's a close second. But there's Microsoft puts out a little newsletter that's included in the resource list as well that has a blog of all of their cumulative changes. So obviously we don't have time to cover all of them, but I'll go over the ones that I found the most interesting in the latest batch. And so we'll start with overarching changes. And the first one I can think of is for those of you that have used the message trace feature in the Exchange Admin Center, you might have seen a little passive-aggressive note from Microsoft at the top saying, hey, we noticed you're using the old message trace. Just so you know, there's a new updated version in the Security and Compliance Center, and it tries to get you to use that. And the reason that they've segmented security and compliance into its own admin centers is one, because these are things that they're going to expand heavily on in the future. Both security and compliance are going to be, big things that that many companies are going to be looking for. So they want to make sure it has its own dedicated space for you to take care of that. And two, they don't want to overcrowd the existing admin centers. Sometimes you'll go into the Exchange Admin Center, try to do message trace, and it just pops up a blank page. So the segmentation will also help with that as well. In addition to the admin centers being segmented, support is kind of receiving the same treatment. If you go to submit a support request, you might see that it's broken down into, the Dynamics platform, Intune, Azure. So this also helps support be more efficient because it's much more likely you'll be directed to the correct department or support rep when you submit your ticket. In addition to the segmentation, there's also a little bit of consolidation as well inside of the main Microsoft 365 Admin Center. A lot of the user properties in the user page have been moved from the Exchange Admin Center, so you can also do it inside of the M365 Admin Center, and it makes things a little easier and more streamlined. Search is, so Microsoft and search have kind of a hit or miss relationship. Windows 7 got it almost perfect. It was like the gold standard of searching and everyone loved it. And then with Windows 8, Microsoft was like, you know what people would really want to see in their search results? Bing. And that didn't turn out so great for the vast majority of people. So Microsoft has learned from that. And the new search feature in the Microsoft 365 Admin Center is a lot more robust. And so far from my experience working with it, it's been great. It's almost Windows 7 level of good. So that's a major improvement there. For managing Office 365, Microsoft 365, because it's a cloud-based feature, it's already a lot easier than managing any on-prem infrastructure, right? All you need is a computer and internet access to manage most of the things. So Microsoft wants to take it one step further and make it even easier for you by letting you manage it from a mobile app. So everyone has a smartphone these days, and you can take it with you wherever you go. So it definitely makes it's a little easier to breathe when you go out for lunch or go out for the weekend, and knowing that if there is some small thing you need to do, you can do it from your phone without having to rush back to your hotel or carry your laptop with you everywhere. And Microsoft in this latest batch has really shown a lot of love to MSPs. And the first feature that I really, really like is when you're doing delegated admin access for a tenant, if you want to switch tenants, normally you would have to close out of the delegated admin, go back to your customer list, search for the customer, click on them, click on Manage Administer Services in Microsoft 365. It's like 6 or 7 clicks. It's not complicated or complex, but it does take a lot of time. So with the new multi-tenant management, what you can do now is you have a drop down in the top left of the delegated admin, and you can simply switch between your tenants at will. So it saves you a couple of clicks, which is always nice. In addition to that, this is a feature that has been requested for a long, long time, which is cross-tenant mailbox migrations. Previously, if you had a tenant that you wanted to switch over, like you wanted to split the domains or you needed to create a new tenant and you wanted to move the mailboxes, you would have to back up everything. You'd have to remove the users and licenses, remove the domain, add it to the new one, recreate everything. And it's a very tedious and time-consuming task. But with this new cross-tenant mailbox migration, you simply move them over from one tenant to the other and you skip all of the tedious things in the middle. So that's a really, really big quality of life change for people that deal with a lot of tenants. In addition to that, service health also breaks down for you which of your tenants are affected by current service issues. So you don't really have to wonder like, oh, hey, this thing is broken. Which one of my clients do I need to call and, either let them know what's going on or fix it for them? With the new service health, when you go to an incident, you can click onto the tenants affected tab and it'll tell you right there, this tenant's affected, this tenant's affected. And so it's a lot easier for you to, apply the appropriate response. So with all of these changes, things move around and sometimes you might not know where to go. We did include the 365 Admin Center cheat sheet, which is like a short little document that kind of guides you to where you want to go inside of the admin centers for what tasks you want to do. So be sure to check that out and hopefully it'll help you out.
All right. Janelle, let's go back to you. If there's one thing that Microsoft loves to do more than change their UI, it's to change their naming conventions. And so I was wondering if you could kind of give us an update to what Microsoft 365 actually is. Is Office 365 still around? Is it the same thing? What do we need to know about what we're actually calling these solutions now?
True. And to begin with, Office 365 is still around, just in not as great of a degree as it was previously. Now, understandably, there's quite a bit of confusion around Microsoft's naming scheme for their Office products. Just as we were becoming comfortable with differentiating the Office 365 product line from the Microsoft 365 product line, Microsoft updated the name of some of their Office 365 business suites to use the Microsoft 365 moniker. For a quick rundown of the product names that went into effect on April 21st of 2020, we have Office 365 Business Essentials, which became Microsoft 365 Business Basic. Office 365 Business Premium became Microsoft 365 Business Standard. Microsoft 365 Business became Microsoft 365 Business Premium. And Office 365 Business and Office 365 Pro Plus are now Microsoft 365 Apps for Business and Enterprise, respectively. Now, according to Microsoft, the reason for the product name change was due to the ever-expanding features included in their Office suites and a desire to more clearly distinguish the innovations that the company is driving in Microsoft 365 that go beyond the traditional Office apps. Microsoft 365 is a combination of apps, services, and features that leverage artificial intelligence and other industry-leading technologies to enhance the way we communicate, share experiences, and collaborate with a strong emphasis on maintaining the highest security and compliance standards. Finding the right Microsoft 365 solution for your organization can be a rather daunting task, which is why Microsoft invests heavily into cloud solution providers such as Trusted Tech Team in order to help you align your business needs with the appropriate licenses. Once more, we've included a link to Microsoft's announcement and full description of the name changes within our sidebar.
All right. Peter, let's stay with you. It seems like one of the things that keeps coming up is around security. Can you give us a summary or recap about what admins or users need to know about where Microsoft is going with their security approach?
Well, certainly. So Microsoft has gone to great lengths to rebrand itself as a security-first company for customers, especially in the SMB and enterprise space, by investing billions of dollars, acquiring world-renowned security firms, and gaining recognition as a leader in security by respected advisory organizations like Gartner and MITRE. Understanding and appreciating the shift in Microsoft's approach to servicing its customers as an admin is important, because it really helps to signify how relevant the topic of security is to all aspects of Microsoft 365. And with that in mind, we can start looking at how Microsoft has truly built one of the vastest security fabrics that spans across in-cloud and on-prem technologies. We have tools like multi-factor authentication, conditional access, Azure AD identity protection, and Microsoft Cloud App Security to protect our front door with automated responses that are based on user behavior and real-time analysis of credentials exposed on the dark web. Then there is Microsoft Defender for Office 365, formerly Office 365 ATP, to mitigate email threats and educate our end users on how to identify potentially malicious emails and content. Next, we have information rights management, Azure information protection, and data loss prevention policies to encrypt and protect documents, whether they are at rest or in transit. We can use Microsoft Endpoint Manager, formerly Microsoft Intune, to manage corporate and employee-owned devices, and Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, formerly Microsoft Defender ATP, and Microsoft Defender for Identity, formerly Azure ATP, to monitor and profile user behavior and activities, which are then used to detect attempts to compromise your network. As you can see, even the security products have recently undergone a series of name changes. These name changes are meant to provide customers a better grasp on Microsoft's security capabilities. Briefly stepping outside the Microsoft 365 product line, there's also Azure Sentinel, which serves as Microsoft's security information and event management solution, also known as a SIEM. Sentinel is able to aggregate information from across your in-cloud and on-prem environments to analyze anomalies, thereby enabling security analysts to quickly query large volumes of data as part of their cyber incident detection and response regimen. Beyond the simplified management that is afforded through the seamless integration of what would typically be considered disparate solutions, Microsoft's deep knowledge of its own products lends it a natural advantage when it comes to architecting security solutions for its customers.
All right. And Michael, final question to you before we go back to questions from the audience. So we always be talking a lot about the updates on Microsoft 365. I'm sure that's not going to be the end of it. What can you tell us about how Trusted Tech Team ensures that their clients are staying up to date, both in features and licensing?
Yeah, so there's no shortage of documentation out there on the web that will try to explain licensing to you, but they're usually pretty dry and convoluted. So what we offer as a direct CSP partner is we give you more of a personal touch. And when you talk to one of our experts, we really take your situation into account. For example, when we onboard any new client, we do an audit of their licensing, and we want to make sure that from the beginning that someone's not under provision or over provision. And a lot of the times we find that the current licensing structure that they're going with is either insufficient or they're just paying too much for things they don't need. So we end up making a lot of adjustments on that step. And working with such a wide variety of IT pros like we do, over 7,000 I think it was by last count, really requires us to keep up to date. And anyone working in tech knows that if you're not keeping up, you're falling behind. So that really, our team really tries to keep up our knowledge with Microsoft and make sure that we pass that knowledge on to our clients so that their success equals our success. And I want to take this opportunity to reach out to everyone here who might be interested in working with us. We are offering a $50 Amazon gift card just to have a 15 to 20 minute meeting with us and to discuss to see if we might be a good fit for your company. I promise you it's not going to be like a timeshare presentation. We're not going to keep you for 4 hours. It's just a quick 15 to 20 minute meeting, and we'll see if we work well together. And if we do, then it's great for both of us. And all of the information that should you be interested, will be in the sidebar, so you can look at that and see if that's something you want to pursue. And if you found me or Chidera charming and you want to hear more from us, we'll be on those calls as well as technical resources. So we hope to see some of you there.
You guys can talk with Michael and Chidera directly, guys. That's great. All right, let's go ahead and start questions from the audience. A lot of really, really good stuff. So I'm excited to hear y'all's responses to this. First one comes from Ted. Our company is currently using G Suite. Can you guys address how Microsoft 365 compares to G Suite? I don't really like many things in G Suite, but I can't convince others in the company to switch. Who wants to go first? Michael, you want to take
I
first?
can take this one.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd like
Yeah. Yeah, so G Suite is pretty good for a free offering, but it's not very scalable. It's not meant for bigger companies, right? Whereas Microsoft 365 is meant for any size of business. It's extremely scalable. You can, no matter how big your company is, you can find something that works for you. G Suite is a lot more lackluster on the features. And it's as far as running a business goes, it doesn't offer you as many options as 365 does. And speaking from personal experience, I've used both G Suite and Microsoft 365 in a variety of jobs, and there's just really no comparison. If you're looking for something that's full featured and is easy to use and is much more future proof and expansion proof, Microsoft 365 is definitely the answer. Gmail has its uses, but it's a free product compared to the Microsoft 360 line, so it does have a lot of limitations as well.
Share, any thoughts from you about G Suite versus Microsoft?
Definitely. In fact, the way I like to look at it is that you don't necessarily have to choose one or the other. The great thing about Microsoft's solutions is that you can actually leverage it on top of whatever cloud solutions you're already using, whether it be G Suite or AWS, in that you can have Microsoft be your identity provider. And I think that's really where Microsoft shines in identity management. I mean, just look at the fact that they've been running Active Directory for who knows how long now. When it comes to identity management and security around your identities, you can go ahead and leverage solutions like Azure AD or Azure AD Identity Protection. You can go ahead and use the conditional access policies that exist within Azure AD by leveraging single sign-on through Azure AD for your third-party cloud apps, such as G Suite, such as AWS. And then on top of that, what you can really take advantage of is the fact that by using Azure AD as your identity provider, your user is really going to have one set of credentials that they need to remember when accessing those different applications, whether they exist within Microsoft Azure or Microsoft 365 and G Suite or AWS or any other cloud application for that matter. So again, it's not necessarily one or the other. I mean, if you have end users that for one reason or another want to stick with G Suite, but at the same time you have a Microsoft 365 subscription, or you're considering a Microsoft 365 subscription, or you just want to improve your security overall, then I would highly encourage you to look into how you could leverage both within your organization.
All right, great. Let's get a question from Mike G. Ransomware got mentioned, and I want to know how the system is protected from ransomware in areas such as Sharepoint or OneDrive. Mm-hmm. Who would like to take that one?
Yeah, I can definitely take that. So the way ransomware is actually protected against within Sharepoint and OneDrive is that both those solutions actually leverage Microsoft's high availability and redundancy solutions in the background. In addition to that, you also have capabilities such as versioning that allows you to, or rather that retains multiple iterations of versions that are within your SharePoint Online environment and also OneDrive environment. So in this way, if you do get encrypted files, or if your files are compromised in any way, you're able to go back to an earlier version that was not affected by the virus. And then on top of that, you also have protections for the files themselves that exist within SharePoint and OneDrive Online through, I believe it's Microsoft Defender for Office 365, which is part of the Plan 2 version of what was formerly known as ATP or O365 ATP, which actually scans documents in real time as your users go to access it. And if it detects viruses within those Word or Excel documents or other Office 365 documents, it actually prevents the user from being able to edit that document. So it basically gives the document in a read-only format. And until the document is fully scanned and run through Microsoft sandboxes to determine it is not in any way malicious, then the user is able to edit the document. So it's a very similar concept to Office 365 safe attachments, but it goes beyond just emails in that it works for files that are located within SharePoint Online and OneDrive as well. So there are a few different measures in place to protect against ransomware, and not just ransomware, but really any virus or malware out there.
Michael, anything that you would add to that?
Nope, Chidera hit the nail right on the head.
All right, sounds good. Let's take a question from Brian9095. What's going on, Brian? One of the new apps is Microsoft Lists. When should we and users have access to it? What are your thoughts, Chidera? I think you were talking about the apps earlier. Let's go ahead and get your thoughts on it.
Yeah. So Microsoft Lists, if I'm not mistaken, is actually in general availability right now. So your users, in all likelihood, have access to it as long as you have the appropriate licensing for it. If not, though, I have seen on several occasions where Microsoft mentions something as being generally available, but they're doing sort of a phased rollout where some tenants get access to that solution or that application sooner than others. But eventually everyone will ultimately have access to it, again, with the respective licensing. So that's one thing I would look into to verify that users actually have the right licensing to take advantage of Lists. And one other thing to be aware of is that Lists is it's a web app. So there's no List app that you actually download. So that might be one other area that you might want to look into is by navigating to the portal.office.com website with a licensed user, and then seeing within their list of applications, which can be expanded upon by clicking on the waffle icon that appears in the upper left-hand corner of their Office portal, and then selecting all apps. You should be able to see all the apps that are available to them, both web apps and downloadable apps, and from there determine if they have lists or access to lists. So I would say start there by checking the user's Office portal, and then also ensure they have licensing.
Michael, anything from you on that?
Nope.
We're going to get you to answer a question at some point.
When Chidera doesn't answer it so completely, I'll have something to add.
We've got a question from Percussive Maintenance, and this is one we get a lot with any real SaaS provider. Is there any way to delay updates, or is Microsoft just basically following the standard SaaS mindset of you get it when we tell you, whether you like it or not? Michael, do you have anything to answer?
Yeah, absolutely. So the forced updates are pretty annoying for the vast majority of people. I still remember the first time Facebook updated its wall and people were losing their minds. So the cool thing about a lot of Microsoft's big changes is they kind of give you an option, right? At some point, they will force you over to the new way. But for now, if you go into your M365 Admin Center, you can see at the top left, it'll say try new Admin Center, and there's a little clickable button. So you can still access the vast majority of the old features. For example, the message tray still works inside of the Exchange Admin Center. They would prefer if you use it in the new Security and Compliance Center, but it still works in the old one. And you can switch between the new and the old M365 Admin Center and the Exchange Admin Center between new and old as well. So Microsoft's general philosophy toward these big updates is they understand that people are resistant to change. And they don't want to force you until they think it's absolutely necessary. So for the most part, they do give you a window where you can choose between the old and the new one, but it does let you know that this is something that's coming in the future. So it's better to familiarize yourself with it. The earlier, the better.
All right, Chidera, anything that you would add to that?
Yeah, just a couple of things. So in regards to delaying updates, if you're referring to Microsoft 365 and Windows 10, the updates that you receive, or rather the way in which you receive updates, are dependent on the update channel that you've actually elected for the respective Microsoft 365 apps and Windows 10. So that's another area that you might want to look into. There are 3 primary update channels. You have your current your current channel, your monthly enterprise channel, and your semi-annual enterprise channel. Your licensing also dictates which type of channel you can elect. So that again is another reason to look into licensing of your users. But yeah, that would be the primary method by which you can delay updates for the actual applications themselves. But as Michael stated, if you're looking to delay updates for the administrative centers, you do want to look at that toggle switch.
All right. Okay, so this is not about Microsoft 365 specifically, but some folks had some issues getting into the M365 Message Center URL and our resource list. Michael, I understand that you wanted to kind of chat about that real quick.
Yeah, so for the message center, you do have to be signed in as an admin in order to access it. So if you're getting a permission denied, you're likely not signing in as a global admin. So if you do have the global admin login, that's how you would see that. And the resource list, you're talking about the what's new in Microsoft 365 Admin Center?
I believe so, yeah.
Oh, no, I think the question was for the message center URL under resource lists.
Yeah, okay, I got it.
Yeah, the other should just link to the Microsoft documentation page. But yeah, for the message center, you do have to be signed in as an admin in order to view the resource.
Okay, great. Let's get a question from Leonard V. So speaking of tenants, does Microsoft allow a tenant to rename domains, such as when companies merge and or want to consolidate tenants? Michael, let's go ahead and get your thoughts.
Yeah, I can take that one. So the way that domains work inside of a Microsoft 365 tenant is you can add or remove domains at will as long as you control the actual domain. So when you want to add a domain to the admin center, you do have to enter a text record into the DNS registrar that the domain is registered under. And that change lets Microsoft know that, hey, these guys own this domain. They just made a change on the DNS level, so we can go ahead and link that domain with their Microsoft tenant. Now, for your question where you're talking about moving domains, there's two requirements to adding a custom domain to Microsoft 365. The first is that you own the domain, and the second is that it's not added to any other 365 tenant. So each domain can only be attached to one Microsoft 365 tenant at a time. So if you have a tenant with domain A and B, and you want to add domain B to your secondary tenant, you do have to remove it from the first one before you can add it to the second one. So you do also want to make sure that you, when you remove a domain, you do remove all the users associated with that domain, because it will take that away when you remove the domain. And yeah, as long as you control the domain, you can move them back and forth at will, as long as you follow those two conditions.
All right. Got another naming question, and I think this is just general advice from Michael7533. So where would I look in 365 to see the actual new product name that we're licensed to use? Chidera or Michael? Yeah, I don't know if either of you guys have advice.
Yeah. So within 365, within your Microsoft 365 Admin Center, the way in which you would be able to determine what licenses you currently have within your tenant is by looking underneath the billing dropdown. Once you expand the billing dropdown, you then have the products line, and you also have the licenses section, both of which would actually indicate the licenses that currently exist in your tenant. The licenses section indicates the licenses that are assigned to users, and then the products section indicates just the licenses, the license quantities that exist within your tenant. So that's one way in which you'll be able to determine which licenses you have with the new names. So the new names would actually appear within your tenant.
Let's get a question. Okay, this is a good one from Joshua. So what features are you looking forward to the next generation, aside from name changes? We'll get both of your
Yeah. So one of the new features I'm actually looking forward to that's still sort of it's still in development for Microsoft, and it actually relates to name changes, but in a much bigger and more impactful way to companies. And that's the ability to change your tenant name. Now, what that means is that when you create a Microsoft 365 tenant, you need to select a company name. Now, that company name is what appears on all your different portals, whether it be the 365 Admin Center or SharePoint. It also dictates what your SharePoint URLs appear as, because your SharePoint URLs begin with your company name. Now, you are able to change your company name, but there's an issue within Microsoft 365 where when you change your company name, it doesn't reflect across the broad range of Microsoft 365 solutions. So you'll have situations where you change your company name within the Microsoft 365 Admin Center, but then your Power Apps platform or your Dynamics 365 portal still shows or still bears the old company name. Well, Microsoft has heard our voices within the user voice forums once again. And as of March 17th of 2020, they actually indicated that the ability to change the tenant name within the Office 365 tenants, especially as it relates to SharePoint Online, is being planned. So that's as of March of this year. I'm hoping they've made some great headway within that time and now, and I'm looking forward to that feature most out of everything that they have planned currently.
Right.
For me, convenience is the thing that I think I value the most. So I'm still looking for them to make a lot more headway on the O365 admin mobile app. And I'm really hoping that one day you'll be able to do everything that you could do in the web browser on the mobile app. And I think that's going to be a really big boon for all the people that manage a lot of things. And I'm also, they made a really great step in the right direction with the cross-tenant mailbox migration. I'd like to see more MSP-related features that allow you to manage tenants much more effectively and more streamlined. So I'm definitely looking for improvements in those areas. And my dream one day is to be able to manage everything from a single page. And I think that is that a lot of people would agree that that would make things a lot easier.
Agreed.
All right. This is a really interesting question from AJ Tech Adam. How do you all recommend managing or going between your M365 global admin account and your own account as a regular user? Obviously, you don't want to be sending emails as your global account, but at the same time, if you need to be going back and forth, that can cause a problem. He says currently using 2 browsers to manage, but default browsers make this complicated. Is it worth amalgamating and assigning global admin rights to your daily user account or keep it separate? Do you guys have any thoughts on that?
So, quite honestly, if you're utilizing the security capabilities that are already found within Microsoft 365, especially within Azure AD, such as multi-factor authentication, such as conditional access policies, such as Azure AD Identity Protection, there's really no reason why you should need to have a separate global admin account and a standard user account, because your global admin account should be extremely secure, to the point where the only way someone could have access to it is if they stole your phone from you, or if they stole your multi authentication device from you physically. And then beyond that, there are also measures that you can put into place, such as privilege identity management, depending on how many global administrators you have within your tenant, to where you can have a process by which you need another global admin or another set of global admins to allow the request of a third global admin to make changes within the tenant. So you can go that route as well. I will say, the creation of a secondary account, a standard user account that's used for just, sending emails and acting as a normal user, that's certainly a practice that's been long-standing, especially with the on-prem Active Directory days. But as far as Azure AD is concerned, there's just so many security tools in place to where you can secure the global admin accounts and use it for all intents and purposes like a normal account, that I just don't see a reason to continue doing that. But that's not to say you're doing it the wrong way, just that there are easier ways to accomplish a similar goal.
Yeah, I think definitely in the earlier days, when on-prem was a lot more prevalent, the best practice of separating your user account and global admin didn't make a lot of sense. But like Chidera said, with all the new security features, the chances of something affecting that, if you choose to go that way, are pretty much negligible in my opinion. And a lot of the security risks, the vast majority of security risks, I would say, is at the user level and not at the account or backend level. So as long as you're really aware of your security practices and you don't just open a bunch of random emails from the global admin account, I think I would definitely just combine them instead of separating them out and having to go through the different browser dance and copying and pasting links back and forth. So yeah, I think with the state of things as they are now, combining the accounts does definitely make sense.
And one other thing I would like to add to that, my only hesitance when it comes to having multiple accounts, one that's a global admin, one that's not, is that it tends to lead administrators down a less secure path, because now they're concerned that they are going to have to pay for the extra license to provision that standard account with the same level of security as the global admin account, when really all your accounts within your tenant should be secured at, to a high degree, I should say, regardless of whether they be global or standard user accounts, because really your weakest link is always going to determine your overall security posture. So even if it's a standard account, there are ways in which that account can be compromised, and then permissions can be elevated to the point where a bad actor began with access to a normal account, but then has access to a global admin account just from having accessed it through the weakest link. So just another reason why you might want to consider reducing the footprint, I should say, your digital footprint, for lack of a better word, by having just a single account that's global admin that is appropriately secured, and then your tenant itself is also likewise secured with tools that can prevent you from, mistakenly opening up malicious attachments or clicking on a malicious link. But yeah, I'd say be about it.
All right. This is a good question from Just Me Eric. Will Office 365, Microsoft 365 start integrating better with Android platform like it does with iOS? Who's got thoughts?
Is that a question of when that will occur, or if?
Or what are your general thoughts on kind of where it's at now, and how good are you seeing it? Is it either you guys Android users, and do you guys use it with your Office solutions?
Yeah, I believe we're both Android users, if not mistakenly.
Yeah. Yep, you got it.
And I'm a bit perplexed by that question, because as far as my usage of my Android device to access Office 365, and even to access things like the Azure Administrator Portal or Microsoft 365 Administrator Portal, which there are apps for those as well, I haven't had any issues to speak of, at least none that wouldn't also impact iOS users. But I'd have to get more information from that individual as to what issues they've experienced, and maybe that's something I can directly address. But I do think we're in a pretty good place right now, and as far as app support for both device platforms, and that support will continue to improve.
So the obvious right answer here is to buy a Windows phone, which is pretty sure that's what Microsoft wants you to do. But it looks like the issue that you're having is the contacts don't sync with Android. And I'm guessing you mean the contacts from your Microsoft 365. So I haven't actually run into that problem personally. But if you want to follow up with us via email afterwards, I'd be happy to take a look at it with you.
Right, definitely. All right, I've got a question from Stormcloud. What is the Office 365 Security and Compliance Center?
Ooh, good question. Yeah.
So So the security and compliance, like I mentioned before, are two things that Microsoft really thinks are going to be big areas in the future. So they wanted to give them their own admin centers because they plan on expanding these features a lot. So they wanted to give them their own space to grow, kind of separate from the other admin centers, so there's less confusion. And so the security and compliance centers, which you can get to by going to protection.office.com and compliance.office.com respectively, are admin centers within your Microsoft 365 tenant, where their names kind of give away what they're meant to do. Security encompasses things like spam protection, overall security, and like a dashboard to view security threats. And compliance deals with a lot of things that your company needs to stay in compliance, whether it's things like HIPAA or other privacy laws. Allows you to do things like create data labels, so you can label messages and data that are highly sensitive so they don't get into the wrong hands, stuff like that. And like I said before, a lot of these features inside of these admin centers are also available in their old location. But if you access them from these new admin centers, they are a little more robust. They look a little different, but from my experience, they work a lot better when you access them through the new way.
All right. Let's get a couple more questions. Let's get a question from Sora. Are there plans to improve the Office 365 online apps to be more comparable to the desktop versions in terms of functionality? What are y'all's thoughts on that?
Yeah. Absolutely. I would say Microsoft's intention is to make the online apps be as feature rich as the desktop apps. We can see that with Microsoft's investment in progressive web apps. I believe Microsoft Teams actually has well, let me take that back. So with Microsoft Edge, the new Edge, the Chromium version of Edge, you're actually able to make your web apps appear like desktop apps. There's a process, a guide that you can follow online. And by doing so, or in that way, I can see Microsoft is really thinking about making web apps the future, just because it's so much easier on their dev team. So resource-wise, it completely makes sense for Microsoft to want to make web apps be the future, the go-to solution that is, as opposed to having to develop for both the web and desktop versions.
Yeah, so the web app is definitely the way of the future. But it might be a little while before it gets to that point, just because of how much development and time has already been put into the desktop apps. So as far as like features go, the desktop apps will remain superior for at least a little while longer.
All right. And one final question before we break, we take off. What George wants to know: what Office 365 or Microsoft 365 training or certifications do y'all recommend for admins that are considering expanding their skill set?
Great question.
So yeah, there's a lot of Microsoft certifications out there, hundreds the last time I checked. But if your main focus is just to get better at administering and just overall managing your environment, I would say there's really no substitute for firsthand experience. And the closest certifications I can think of, the MS 100 and the MD 100, I believe, deal primarily with the Microsoft 365 platform. So those are definitely good starting places. But my biggest recommendation, if you are looking to get more proficient at this, is to, if you don't have a tenant that you could test with, just to create one and just try to administer it as best as you can. And experience definitely is the number one teacher in this type of thing.
All right. Sounds good. And we're starting to run out of time. I wanted to give you guys a last opportunity to share any final thoughts or advice you might have. Here, we'll start off with you. Any parting words of wisdom for our audience today? Judare?
Oh, is that I'm sorry. I just heard you. But yeah, in terms of parting words of wisdom, I'd say, yeah, definitely learn or take some time to learn about Microsoft 365, you're able to create um, subscriptions, I should say, tenants, trial tenants with trial versions of Microsoft 365 licensing. And then by reaching out to Microsoft support, you're able to extend those trials at least one time. And then you have a number of licenses from which you can initiate new trials from. So in that way, you can get several months of experience just by using trial licenses. But I'd say that's probably one of the best ways to sort of get familiar, or rather to familiarize yourself with the Microsoft 365 solutions, especially as it relates to the newer licenses. And in beyond that, Microsoft documentation, they do have some pretty good documentation out there on the vast majority of their solutions. So if you were to do a Google search for a solution that you had in mind, then in that way you can at least get some tertiary knowledge about the product, and then from there decide if that's something that you want to invest in.
All right. And Michael, any final takeaways from you?
So for me, I'm not the biggest fan of change. When they rolled out the Security and Compliance Center, my first thought was, oh great, now I have to do 3 more clicks in order to get to message trace. Anyway, the big takeaway is change is sometimes good, and keep an open mind.
All right. Sounds good. All right, y'all. Thank you so much for hanging around with us today and asking all those great questions. Now I wanted to announce the winners of our $250 Amazon gift card, and those are going to go to GR Tech Guy and L. Kugler. Congratulations, GR Tech Guy and L. Kugler. Y'all are the winners of our prizes for today. Please send a private message to David S. in the community. Let him know where you would like those shipped, and let us know what you guys buy with them. And thank you again to Michael and Chidera, as well as to Trusted Tech for sponsoring today's events. And we hope that you guys will get a chance to come hang out with us again real soon. But until then, y'all stay safe, keep it spicy. We'll see y'all back here next time. So long, everybody.
Bye, guys.
Thanks, guys.